What's good? Coming back at y'all with another video. I know it's been probably a couple of weeks. Just been kind of busy balancing doing this along with some of the other like music production and artist related content that I do on my other page. But glad to be back, and we finally arrived to week one. So this weekend, Sunday, is going to be Raiders versus Chargers, and I'm very excited for this coming season. I've been excited since the Devontae Adams trade and then getting Chandler Jones as well. And just, it took a while for McDaniels to grow on me, but as I watched the team during the preseason, I just saw how everything looked a lot more disciplined, offense. There was less penalties. The defense knew their assignments. Everything just ran smoothly in those preseason games. Now, of course, the regular season is going to be much different, and we're going to see about that. Real quick, if this is your first time here on this channel, I actually just started this Raiders channel. This is like my third video. If you like this content, go ahead, hit the subscribe button. Also, I don't have a actual like Raiders Instagram or Twitter or anything, but if you do want to follow me on those platforms, you can follow me on Instagram at d._majormusic, as well as Twitter at d.mme. All right, so what I really wanted to get into this video, just a couple of things. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is I'm looking here. I went through some of the Bleacher Report rankings, and it's not just them. It's a lot of other media outlets. I've saw Raiders power rankings, and I don't really like to pay attention personally to power rankings at this time of the year. However, given the way last season was, I thought I would make a video talking about the power rankings as well as how the Raiders finished last season and some of the acquisitions that they made this season. Personally, looking at this list I have right here, so Chargers at 6, Denver at 9, KC at 5, which I can honestly see that, and then the Raiders are actually at 13. So as I said at the beginning of the video, now we kind of rewind back to last season. The Raiders finished 10-7. They actually got into the playoffs, winning 4 games in a row, and en route to actually also beating the Chargers along the way. Now, not to say anything that the Chargers haven't done doesn't deserve to kind of take notice at, but I believe that until you prove you can do something, that you shouldn't be put into that position. Now, with that being said, the Raiders finished second place in the AFC West last year, and they were, of course, a wild card. And even though the Chargers and the Raiders played pretty much until that final second, the Raiders won that game. That was what it was. Now, a lot goes into it. I also see a lot of rankings which has Derek Carr as the fourth best quarterback in the AFC West, which I don't completely agree with, to my own personal opinion, and I've seen that from a lot of other people as well. But I think that with the acquisition of Devontae Adams, along with what we have with Renfro and what we have with Waller, Jacobs, Zamir White, and the list goes on in the offense, it's going to be really tough for a lot of defenses to cover all of those different options on offense, especially like having you could move Devontae and Hunter around any way you want to, and just Waller's ability to run routes like a receiver, and hopefully Waller can stay healthy as well. And what a lot of people also fail to realize, and this kind of goes back to Derek Carr, but looking down the stretch last year, kind of in the middle of the season, for example, I think it was actually right around the time they played the Bengals, but that's when they lost Henry Ruggs, and then shortly after that on Thanksgiving Day, Darren Waller went down, And then they had some losses until they got on that 4-game winning streak to end the season. But a lot of people also, especially out of the Raiders community, fail to realize that over that time, yeah, Derek Carr lost two of his biggest targets. He only threw for 24 touchdowns last year. And yeah, I actually got into it with a Chargers fan online that was talking about, comparing him to Justin Herbert and, bringing up Herbert's 41 touchdowns. And I said to myself that I'm not necessarily saying that Derek Carr would have went from 24 to 41 touchdowns. But had he had those targets available, of course he would have went above 24 touchdowns, and those interceptions might have been less as well. So I say that to say, if he has his targets for the majority of the season, I know, you may have someone miss a game or two here and there. I hope there are no significant injuries. However, with what they had last year, they were able to at least get into the playoffs. And with what they've acquired this year, I think they've gotten better as well. Because, and everybody's known, if you followed the Raiders throughout Derek Carr's career, up until this year, he's never really had a number one receiver, a true number one receiver. He's had some great receivers, I would say some good receivers come through. Crabtree and Coop were good in 2016, and they didn't bounce back like they should have in 2017. And there are a lot of other things that happened along the way as well, a lot of injuries. Todd Downing was a disaster. And, I also say that to say this year, I think, is a lot different than 2017 from the standpoint of Derek Carr having been through what 2017 was. That was the year injuries for him. They finished under 500. Jack Del Rio got fired. Now, of course, last year, they, of course, made the playoffs, and Gruden still got fired. But I feel going to a offensive-minded coach such as Josh McDaniels will help this offense reach a higher level than they were at last year. Now, last year, they got stuck a lot in the red zone, having to settle for field goals, whether that was not being able to just get the ball in the end zone or, from penalties on the offensive line, which shouldn't be there anymore. But I don't see a lot of those things happening. And to kind of go back to the point about Derek Carr would have certainly threw more touchdowns had he had all his targets. I think this year, at the minimum, it was like it should be 30 touchdowns this year. It should be 30 touchdowns at the minimum Derek Carr should have by the end of this season. I think he's going to have more, because I think the year they actually went to playoffs in 2016, Derek Carr, I think that year had like 32 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. I definitely see that being something that he's going to improve upon this year. Looking at the other teams, I think the Chargers made some pretty good moves. However, I don't know if J.C. Jackson is going to play in that first game, and that could be something. If he does play, let's say he's not healthy, that could be something that could possibly, because it's a foot injury of some sort, I don't know all the details, but that could be something that could linger on throughout the year. So I'm not sure if the Chargers staff will hold him out and not risk potentially him getting injured and not being available later on down the line in the year, or if he's good to go if they're going to put him out there. So if they won't put him out there, I give us a better chance of winning. I think we're going to win anyway, but I think that it's going to probably be a close game on Sunday, very similar to how it was played on the last game of last season. So I'm in Texas, so those West Coast games are typically around 3:15, 3:30. And I know if you're out there on the West Coast, that's like 1:30 for you. So Look forward to watching that on Sunday. Aside from the Chargers, Denver. Let's talk about Denver. Now, Russell Wilson has had some pretty tough seasons. The last, I would say, maybe two that he had in Seattle. I don't think he's performed up to the Russell Wilson of old. And, Denver, another reason I'm not buying Denver, I think they'll start out very similar to what they started out last year. Have a nice record, maybe 6-7 games into the season. But I think after that, they're going to kind of fall off. I just don't, for me personally, another thing about my initial point with Denver, like, they haven't proven yet without Russ that they were close to kind of getting over the top. Like, I don't think this is necessarily looking at the Buccaneers, for example, how the Buccaneers went, 7-9, I believe, with Jameis Winston the season before Tom Brady. I don't think it's necessarily a similar transition like that. I don't think they were close. They definitely were not one of the worst teams in the league, but they also were not close to making the playoffs last year. And I just don't think the addition of Russell Wilson will be enough to get them in the playoffs, at least not this year, maybe another year or two from now. But he is getting a little bit older, and he just got that contract a couple of days ago. So that could be a situation that Denver has to revisit at some point. Do I see potential there? Yeah, but I still do not think that they're better than the Raiders. The Raiders haven't lost any significant pieces from that playoff team. I mean, Yannick Ngakoue, he was great. And a lot of people will say that Chandler Jones is an upgrade, especially in run defense, which I also believe as well. But outside of that, I don't think that the Raiders have lost anything. They've gotten better. So I don't see, like, looking at these rankings right now, I told you about Bleacher Report, but I saw all kind of other photos online from just different media outlets. And it's going to be the same story this year. They're going to always, it's just something about the Raiders that they don't necessarily like talking about the Raiders on television, and I'm cool with. I don't necessarily follow a lot of, I don't necessarily take the opinions of people at ESPN, for example. Maybe some of the ones at NFL Network. Another good person I like is Rich Eisen, who I think his analysis and his perspective is, it's reasonable why he picks the Raiders. He's actually been on the Raiders for quite some time, so he's been consistent. But you see a lot of these other talking heads on television that flip-flop back and forth, like Colin Cowherd, for example, who's probably going to flip-flop at least 5, 6, 7 times before the end of next season is over and say, oh yeah, all the time I've always believed in the Raiders and I've always thought that they had a chance in this division. But I could look at some of these commentators and tell which one of them are actually invested in watching some of the Raiders games, like they watch all the other games, and then I could look at them and tell they haven't actually watched. They don't know what they're talking about. It happens every year, so it doesn't surprise me where these rankings are, and I'm sure we're going to continue to see more and more come out throughout the whole season. So the last thing that I did want to discuss is, and this is my prediction for this year, I actually got the Raiders finishing 11-6. I think that they may have a shot at the end of the year to win a division, with the last game being against Kansas City. And I think this year, more than probably previous years, they have a pretty good shot. The schedule to come out isn't too bad. I mean, you're going to have in the first couple of weeks, you got the Chargers, you got Arizona, and then I think from there they got to go to Tennessee and then back against Denver. I'm actually going to be out there, by the way, out there in Las Vegas when they play the Texans. So if any of you are out there, you see me out there, feel free, reach out to me. Let me know who you are. Would love to talk some Raiders with you. And that's the reason that I created this page, was just to talk about a team that I really like. I'm actually gonna be making some basketball videos as well, but this is kind of like my sports channel, and for me to talk about the teams that I like. Yeah, I got the Raiders going 11-7, and will that be enough to win the division? We'll see. We'll see. It may require more. The division has changed. It's going to be a very competitive division. I was watching the Raiders report from Mitchell Renz. Shout out to Mitch. But he also said 11-6. We kind of agreed on that same record. How we got there may be slightly different. There are some games, within the division that I think we're going to win at home. But there are some games on the road that I think we're going to win. For example, like, I always think the Raiders play really good against Pittsburgh for some reason when they go out to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. So, yeah, it's gonna be very fun. I'm looking forward to next season. What do you think the record's gonna be next season? Go ahead, leave it in the comments section. Enjoy. Next Sunday should be coming at y'all with another show with the homie Prime, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, it's your boy D Dot. You can actually follow me on Instagram at D_Major Music, as well as same thing on TikTok. Follow me on Twitter at D.MME. And until next Sunday, stay tuned, and I'm out.